Yeah, and Harris, if Illinois schools are transitioning students without the consent or knowledge of their parents, the Department of Justice is going to find out about it. As you mentioned, the DOJ has launched an investigation into some 36 schools in Illinois. The investigation is going to probe whether the schools are pushing woke agenda on the students, particularly if they're pushing sexual orientation and gender ideology. Now, the investigation will examine if parents have been notified about how sexual orientation and gender ideology is being presented to the students, whether parents are being kept in the dark about a child taking on another gender, and whether students are forced into locker rooms and bathrooms with a person born the opposite gender.
So there's a Fox News report on this ridiculous story coming out of Illinois schools, they're my home state, where it turns out that the secret gender transition mentality, where there are things that are going to be discussed at school that are going to be kept from parents, they're looking into 36 schools regarding this type of behavior, among other things. And we're going to speak now with the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights at the U.S. Department of Justice. Harmeet Dillon joins us now. Thank you so much for being with us today. It's great to have you back on the show with us, Harmeet.
Thank you, Annie. Happy to be here.
So I want to give you the floor here to tell us, you're talking to a bi-state listener area, so about 45% or so of our audience is in Illinois. What do you want people to know about what might be taking place in their schools, in their classrooms, without those parents knowing in the state of Illinois?
Well, Illinois' learning standards for so-called comprehensive personal health and safety education and comprehensive sexual health education are problematic in the sense that we are being told that they don't include opt-out rights for parents. And so, the core concepts in, for example, children as young as 5 to 7, it will include gender identity and gender role stereotypes. For 8 to 10-year-olds, the role of hormone blockers on young people who identify as transgender, and teaching students that sex assigned at birth is a concept, which is, of course, anti-scientific. For 11 to 13-year-olds, they're teaching them about vaginal, oral, and anal sex. Sorry to offend any of your listeners there with that graphic stuff, but that's what 11 and 13-year-olds are being taught. And develop a plan for the school to promote dignity and respect for people of all gender identities. And then finally, high school students have programs to advocate for school and community policies that promote gender identity, dignity. So this is pervasive and dating from 5-year-olds all the way up to 18-year-olds. And parents have a right under Supreme Court precedent, reiterated most recently and earlier this year in a case called Mahmoud versus Taylor, to direct their children's education, particularly on sensitive matters like this. And if these schools are not informing the parents about their opt-out rights or allowing them to opt out, that's a problem. And to the extent that this identity indoctrination is actually grooming children to change their gender identity, and that's being kept from parents, that's strictly illegal under Supreme Court precedent. So we want to make sure that parents and children in Illinois are being protected, and we've identified these school districts based on federal funding that goes to them, and so that's how we pick these school districts.
If anybody is listening right now and they know of a situation or scenario in their Illinois public school district, is this something that you think could be broader than the schools that you've highlighted? Is this the start for the department?
Yeah, I think this is happening all over the country, definitely. Yeah. There have been lawsuits in other jurisdictions as well. We are also looking at sports issues under Title IX because girls and boys are entitled to equal access and proper access to their sports opportunities. And when girls are forced to share locker rooms with boys and vice versa, that impacts their right to access that equal opportunity. And that is also going on all over the country. We have lawsuits pending by my department in Minnesota, Maine, and California. And I think it's a very important right that it's mainly girls who are, suffering. In occasional cases, there's a case in Loudoun County where boys were forced to share a locker room with a girl. But it's usually going in the opposite direction because boys will be boys. And I think it's a problem.
Yeah. Harmeet Dillon speaking with us right now, the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights at the U.S. Department of Justice. I want to key in a little bit on that Supreme Court precedent from here recently that you were highlighting. I think it's important, at least as my recollection, I hope I'm getting this right, is that the people who challenged the education, especially of these small children, this type of gender identity ideology, that it wasn't just coming from Christian families. There were religious entities that came together to say this is not for us, and we should have the ability to opt out, that this isn't a Christian identity versus a more, liberal, progressive social identity. It's bigger than that.
Well, Mahmoud versus Taylor is an example of that. That's a Muslim family that wanted to protect their children from this kind of indoctrination. So you're absolutely correct. It is a lot of people of faith, but it doesn't have to be people of faith. You could not believe in God and still believe that it is the role of the parents.
Yes.
And not, blue-haired, anthropology graduates to be indoctrinating your children on gender identity and use terms like sex assigned at birth. That's not even scientific. That's crazy.
I want to ask you too, specifically about the state of Illinois, which is my home state. I've watched our governor, Governor J.B. Pritzker, a supermajority of Democrats in the General Assembly in Springfield, who really don't even run the budget by the Republicans that are there because they don't need any of their votes and they pass it in the dead of night. The state is a destination for far left progressive policies that they can get through if they really want to. J.B. Pritzker, the governor, has said repeatedly that they're going to do everything they can to go against what the Trump administration implements. They're going to push back. They want to be a leader, a bellwether of sorts in trying to fight back against Trump. Do you believe that these implementations in these school districts are meant to subvert specifically Trump administration rules, laws, federal laws, or do you think that this is just the way that the left goes when they have unchecked power within a state?
Yeah, I don't think this is specific to Trump. This kind of indoctrination was happening under, the Biden administration, and it's been something that's been going on, I would say, probably increasing for the last 10 years or so. I personally, before I became the head of the Civil Rights Division, represented 4 different young women who had been, groomed in this manner in schools and on social media, and then took steps to attempt to change their gender identity, so to speak, and then went on to sue doctors and, I've had other cases involving challenging this type of behavior in schools. It is happening all over the country. It isn't just Illinois. It isn't having anything to do with Trump. And, people are pushing back because, look, in Europe, these types of procedures to change gender for children are increasingly banned. Europe tried it, and it didn't work. In fact, it doesn't make people happier. It doesn't work. It mutilates people, and you can't change your gender. Sorry, that's just not a thing. So
Science.
I think we need to protect children are vulnerable. Like adults are a different category. Adults can do whatever, but children, we have a duty as a society, and parents have a duty to their family members to protect them, and the state can't interfere with that.
Harmeet Dillon, Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights at the U.S. Department of Justice, speaking with us right now. When we see this being force-fed in these Illinois districts as the investigation continues, we'll find out more specifically about what each school district is doing. Is this something that comes from the teachers' unions? Is this something that comes just from the State Board of Education? Where do you suspect that this type of aggressive indoctrination, how is it making its way into the classroom?
Well, teachers' unions definitely push this stuff, but it's left-wing legislators in your legislatures that pass these laws that make this the law.
So it looks like the power does rest within the people of the state. If they wanted to change it, of course, you could do so at the state legislature level. I just want to tell you, as a resident of the state of Illinois, I'm grateful that you are looking into this. We feel very unseen if you're a conservative of any kind in the state of Illinois, and knowing that you and the Department of Justice is taking a look at this, it's very refreshing. And we're really grateful for your time today, Harmeet. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye-bye. Harmeet Dillon, the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights at the U.S. Department of Justice.